So now we have to start to get into the second part of book 9. There is a lot to get to with book 9. So, leaving where we left off, Eve has stated that she wants to go work alone, and she is headed off to do so. And we feel a little bit bad for Adam as he's watching her leave, and he keeps reminding her that he wants to meet up with her at noon, and he can't take his eyes off her. And it's very sad. The next time he sees her, she will be fallen. In this book, Milton deals with something closer to reality as we know it, and he has ventured away from narrating events that are divine, and he's almost literally coming down to earth in this book, and incorporating his own notions of human nature and how humans interact with each other. He's a human author now. All right, so it has just been said that I had just said in the last podcast, that Eve seems to trust the perfection of Eden more than Adam, and that's why she is ready to work separately from him. But really, to put it better, I think she is simultaneously capable of enjoying Eden while also risking it, while also not fearing to lose it. Because really, to fear to lose something is to fail to appreciate it while you have it. And as we will see, she's unhampered. She is in an unbothered state of mind. And we see this in the description of Eve as she's wandering through the garden. This is a woman living in the pleasures of the present moment. And as we will see later, Adam isn't necessarily in that state of mind. He is not as happy outside of her presence as she seems to be happy outside of his presence. In line 430, the flowers, she upstays gently with myrtle band, mindless the while herself. She's mindless. She doesn't have a care in the world. From each thing met conceives delight. Nymph-like step, this is some of the language. She makes the world around her more beautiful. I mean, Milton's really writing an ode to her in this part. Line 453, what pleasing seemed for her now pleases more. And this is interesting too, because I've been talking about how the story of the state of pre-fallen man can be likened to the story of Prometheus. Eating from the tree is like the gift of fire, because it's an imparting of ingenuity. And here's line 391. Eve, with such gardening tools as art yet rude, guiltless of fire, had formed, or angels brought. So Milton here directly characterizes the state of pre-fallen man as one in which innocence prohibits innovation, guiltless of fire. It's not, they haven't invented it. It's not incapable of fire. It's guiltless. Guiltless. He's likening innocence and guilt with innovation and innovation and ignorance, really. But now for the threat of evil, and so she's being stalked in her innocent state, and I think this is kind of, line 412. Since the first break of dawn, the fiend, mere serpent in appearance, forth was come. How do you like this? Isn't this kind of a disconcerting line? The hard-working devil, I think. They're kind of blushing. They're walking around in their state of ignorance, saying goodbye to each other. They're, listening to the birds and the flowers. But meanwhile, the devil, he's been up since dawn. He's been up since dawn, plotting their downfall. It's a scary thought. Line 421, we learn that he had sought them both. He preferred to find Eve alone, and he does, but he had sought them both. And as he's stalking her, he does say in a monologue that he searched for Adam as well and didn't find him. But in line 453, he says, as far as Adam is concerned, whose higher intellectual more I shun. All right, so there's more sexism. Okay, he thought Adam is tougher. But I think it's in more of this ode to Eve's beauty. Evil itself is bereaved of its fierceness at the sight of her. In line 465, the devil is stupidly good, is what Milton says. Also, as the serpent is moving in towards her, and by the way, we shouldn't be picturing some ordinary garden snake here. This is a full blown big snake. So as the serpent is moving around and stalking her, it's almost like this poem is a little bit of ahead of its time in generating a certain amount of horrific suspense. Nearer he drew, then voluble and bold, now hid, now seen. I mean, we can picture a camera close up of portions of this serpent going in and out of view in the dense kind of foliage. So this to me is this is kind of ahead of its time, I think, this kind of suspenseful storytelling. And his strategy. So the serpent comes up to Eve, and his strategy clearly is to flatter her. But I think it's a little funny that he wants her to notice him first, and it takes some time. He follows her, licking the ground she has just walked on. He keeps bowing before her. Remember, he can rear up. The serpent is is reared up, so it takes some time. It must be kind of awkward. I almost think these lines are a little awkward. It's because kind of, how do you break the ice when you're disguised as a snake? You know, how do you start a conversation? You know, for any guy out there who's thought about how to start a conversation with a girl that he wants to talk to, how much harder is it when you're a snake, when you look like a snake? So eventually, she does look at him with enough attention that he begins the conversation. We might wonder, does he scare the shit out of her? Well, Milton doesn't seem to think this is a novelty worth adding. So he speaks to her from lines 532 to 548. And at the end of it, all we do is we find her much marveling, but there's no indication that he startles her, which is a little bit of a disappointment. I thought that could have been funny. So he tries flattering her. He uses all kinds of flattering language throughout these scenes. Calls her a sovereign mistress. He calls her a goddess among gods. She should be served by angels numberless. She should be served by angels. This should hit home with her. She just served an angel along with her husband. This serpent's telling her, you're the one who should be served, Eve. Well, her first question seems natural enough. How can you talk, Snake? How is it that you can talk? He continues the flattery. He calls her empress. You know, we hear the language of prostration really heavily. Line 570. What thou commandest, and right thou shouldst be obeyed. How prostrating is that? In line 575, I chanced a goodly tree far distant to behold. So this is the serpent answering the question, how it came that he can talk. And I think it's funny. He's feigning ignorance of the fact that there's a rule and that there's a tree that pertains to knowledge of good and evil. He just says, well, I just ate a random fruit from a random tree. And for some reason, it doesn't occur to her to assume that this must be the forbidden tree. So she follows her, and they walk to the tree. And as the serpent is leading her there, Milton calls it the tree of prohibition in line 644. But now she sees the tree, and she realizes that she's been led. She knows what tree she's been led to. And again, the serpent pretends he had no idea. And so this Satan goes into this long discourse. And again, we get another Promethean line, the likening of the plant to the imparting of man's wisdom, man's ingenuity. Line 679, the wisdom-giving plant, mother of science. That's what Satan calls the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the mother of science. Interesting lines, line 700. This is part of his logic. God cannot hurt ye and be just, not God. You know, it's all this circular stuff. Your fear itself of death removes the fear. I think he's very much playing in to this kind of circular, confusing logic. Why would God forbid knowledge? You know, all this head scratching, these scruples that they've all been having. I don't think it's really that coherent. I actually think a lot of these arguments, the arguments that Satan makes aren't Milton at his best, I don't think. So you almost wonder, just as kind of, being a wise ass, why doesn't she ask the snake to just take a bite right then and there? Prove it. You ate from the tree, eat it right now. I'm watching. I feel like she could have done that, but she doesn't. So she goes into her monologue, at the end of which she's going to justify why she eats from the fruit. And it's like paradoxical. She shouldn't be able to reason. She hasn't eaten from the tree yet. She's an unknowing creature, and Milton seems to kind of be playing with this. He seems to be playing with the paradox that she shouldn't even be able to think about what she's doing. She shouldn't be able to even decide what rules to follow, what rules not to follow. She's supposed to be in pure ignorance. What's the harm in breaking this rule? She seems to wonder. And she also asks this question, this is line 758. What forbids he but to know, forbids us good, forbids us to be wise? That's the end of that quote. And it seems like an interesting question. But I think you could almost add to the question. Let's interject some words here to make this more clear. She almost really seems to be saying, what else does God forbid us besides knowledge? And this is just calling our attention right back to the fact that there are no rules in Eden but this one. So you're not allowed to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but there's no other rules. There's no other example set for them of what good conduct is. So as far as they know, what do they know about trespass and sins and cheating and stealing and lying? They don't know about any of that stuff. All they know is that there's this one silly rule that they don't understand. They don't know about a life of sin, about man doing bad things and leading bad lives. They're ignorant to all of that. They don't know what they're risking. It all kind of comes down to that. So eventually she eats. And I think it's funny, actually. She kind of can't tell if the fruit tastes good or not. It's kind of, we human, this is what I'm talking about. Finally, Milton is starting to show his almost comedic ability to describe human nature. How many times do we in our lives fail to necessarily criticize something if we've already had it built up so much? We think it's good, even if it's not. Line 787. Such delight till then as seemed in fruit she never tasted, whether true or fancied so, through expectation high. And then we get this line which the earth felt the wound. And we know that Adam senses it. And there's going to be, for the rest of this poem, and into book 10, we're going to hear that the fall is felt, throughout the universe, basically. More language pertaining to knowledge, this Promethean component. Line 837, that the tree has sciential sap. Okay, it's a tree of science. She even thinks about, this is Eve suddenly developing some cunning. She thinks about not telling Adam. She thinks, well, maybe she's going to use this to her advantage. She may equal him or even exceed him in talent. But she ultimately decides, no, what if God does kill me? What, he gets another Eve? We can't have that happening. Although she finishes by saying she loves him. When we're back to Adam is already wary that something has happened. Because this, like I just said, the fall is felt everywhere. Line 846, he, the faltering measure, felt. So he could feel this, which is strange because he's supposed to be innocent. And poor Adam, I think this is a sad moment in Paradise Lost. Poor Adam had been making her a garland that she's going to be able to wear on her head this whole time, and he keeps thinking about her. It's that old adage of absence makes the heart grow fonder. So he's excited to see her after being away from her for so long. And then he sees her, and she tells him, and this chill horror runs through his veins, and there's this line, he drops the garland that he made from her. I think this moment is really sad. His arms go lax, and he drops his present for her. And her language in trying to get him to eat is really not favorable to her. She's almost insisting that, hey, you better eat this fast before I grow weary of you. You better hurry up and eat this. Now that I'm better than you, you need to catch up. You might become tedious. He uses the language tedious, the word tedious. He needs to eat as soon as possible before she stops loving him as a deity, is how she closes. So, and Adam's reasoning for eating the fruit, really is pretty funny. And I think this line here on line 911 is meant to be funny. Should God create another Eve and I another rib afford? So Adam's thinking it through. He's saying, well, what if I don't eat it? What, God's going to kill Eve? Then he's going to have to create another Eve? Geez, he's going to have to come and take another rib. Man, it sounds like such a big, long hassle. And to me, I think Milton means this line to be funny. I think Milton is capable of poking a little bit of fun at the literal interpretation of Scripture. Aye, another rib afford. I think that's supposed to be a little funny. Now, there's kind of another theme of Book 9 where the characters seem to ascribe human qualities and almost human vices, human flaws to God. Satan calls him envious. Line 729, Satan had asked Eve, can envy dwell in heavenly breasts? Can God just be jealous of you? Have you ever considered that? And now Adam kind of wonders if God has this sense of pride. He seems to wonder that God might have too much pride to destroy this world and his own race of man. Line 938, nor can I think that God, creator wise, though threatening, will in earnest so destroy us, his prime creatures, dignified so high, set over all his works. And this is interesting, which in our fall, for us created, needs with us must fail. So Adam, again, Adam still hasn't eaten the fruit, and he's sort of suggesting, the theme we've been talking about all along, that God is somewhat to blame. So Adam is kind of saying, to what extent will God take it out on us? Isn't he partly to blame for this? And he even kind of goes on. Like, what's God going to do? Adam wonders. Destroy us? Create a whole new earth, a whole new mankind, and start over again? And what? How is God going to interpret himself? What if man falls yet again? At what point is God too proud to keep having his creations end in failure? Isn't God at some point going to take it personally? He almost seems to say. There's no language in there that goes that far. But Adam's kind of wondering, like, well, does God want to keep this up? He can't seem to make anything good. And he closes, though, by saying, and it's another kind of, the love between the two of them can be touching at times. He kind of says, Adam almost suggests that his loyalty to Eve kind of exceeds his loyalty to anything else. They're one flesh, he says, and he will risk death along with her, that there's a natural bond, a bond of nature between them. And then what happens? Well, then he eats. And what's the first thing they do? This is the part where we're expecting them both to feel shame, right? That's the dramatic moment that you wait for when you're talking about the fall of man and eating from the fruit. Oh, the shame they're going to feel now. Now they're going to be aware of their nakedness. The exact opposite happens. Line 1013. This is about Adam looking at Eve. Carnal desire inflaming. He on Eve began to cast lascivious eyes. She him as wantonly repaid. In lust they burned, till Adam thus 'gan Eve to dalliance move. And now Adam starts talking to Eve, and I think this whole line is so great. So knowledge includes an ability to appreciate sex, ability to appreciate how a person looks. It even includes the ability to have good taste. Listen to this line, these words from Adam. This is starting, I think, 10:17. Eve, now I see thou art exact of taste, and elegant, of sapience no small part, since to each meaning savor we apply, and palate call judicious. I the praise yield thee. So well this day hast thou purveyed, much pleasure we have lost, and while we abstained from this delightful fruit, nor known till now true relish tasting. If such pleasure be in things to us forbidden, it might be wished, for this one tree had been forbidden 10. But come, so well refreshed, now let us play, as meat is after such delicious fare. For never did thy beauty, since the day I saw thee first and wedded thee, adorned with all perfection, so inflame my sense with ardor to enjoy thee, fairer now than ever, bounty of this virtuous tree. And so you might know what they do next. On the beds of flowers, Adam and Eve have the first carnal